most common fines OSHA gives in residential roofing?
And they weren't being safe, and OSHA ended up showing up because of the TV show. So they found some unsafe stuff.
Give me an example how you help to reduce the fine.
They're going to stick it to you, and they have the right to, and I think they should.
What's up, insiders? We have a hard hat in the shot. It means we're talking safety today. We have Keith here. What's your official title? What do you do?
My name is Keith Kavanaugh, and I'm an owner of a safety consulting company.
So you work for Tectum?
Yes, Tectum is one of my clients that I provide safety services.
We're in Colorado talking safety with Sean from Tectum. And my first question is, when you as a business owner get a fine by OSHA, how do you combat it? Is it something that you can help with?
So he creates all of our safety programs, just like an attorney creates your contracts for proposals, he creates my safety plan. So whenever there is a situation that may or may not happen on a roof, I get Keith involved, and Keith immediately steps in because he wrote it, he trained our guys, and he knows exactly how to handle the situation.
So you're an OSHA lawyer. That's how he calls you.
That's exactly how I call it.
Not
He won't call it that, but I do.
But I do kind of try to
Protect my clients and make sure that they're following the line of the law and making sure that they don't end up with an OSHA citation.
All right. Before you answer this question, I want my audience to answer how you, business owners, make your roofers wear safety harness. Because I've seen so many comments on this channel when people say, I've never seen a roofer wearing harness. It's almost impossible for the business owner to really, I mean, we can endorse, we can train, we can do a whole bunch of stuff in a warehouse, but we can buy harnesses, but how do you actually make roofers wear harness?
So getting the guys to comply, it takes a couple different tactics. Obviously, first you got to have a set of rules, right? Instead of having a set of established rules that everybody needs to understand is where you start. And then just getting the guys to understand the importance of how to wear the harness. Like a lot of the guys feel like it's something that they have to do, but when you start to explain how to adjust the harness and why they're adjusting it, it starts to make sense to these guys. And so by getting buy-in from explaining it through the training, I guess, it helps the guys.
And I'm pretty sure fines help too. Once you pay the first fine, you don't want it to happen again. What kind of fines we're getting today in Colorado for
OSHA
harness?
Is currently updating their fine system. They used to have the same fines. It used to be $7,000 was a maximum for a first-time penalty through 2017. And then in 2017, they kind of changed the rules and they implemented an increase, and it was a 78% increase immediately. So the fines went up to over $13,000 and per infraction, right? Per person per infraction. So it holds a huge potential. But at the beginning of the year, January 1, they just raised their fines again.
But do they endorse it? Because I mean, if you're driving by, job site and you see a roofer's not wearing harness, can they stop and fine?
absolutely.
Do they do it? Do they practice?
Yeah, so there's 4 different reasons why OSHA will show up. It might just be today. That's called a programmed inspection. You've got what's called a drive-by inspection, and that is where they're noticing the workers that are not safe or some kind of a safety violation, right? So they'll choose to stop in. And then there's follow-up inspections, complaints or referrals, and those would happen from either neighbors or guys that didn't get the job, or maybe somebody that was fired or something.
Not that roofers call other roofers because they got mad about a contract.
Sometimes even media.
Believe it or not, even media.
I believe it.
It's like if you're on the TV and they see a roofer up on the roof not tied off.
How often does that happen? So let's say you're a YouTuber and you film your own job. Can they fine you for that? Do you see that's happening?
Absolutely. I've seen it happen. So like if you're shooting a commercial or whatever and your guys are not safe in the background, definitely if they catch wind of that, they will. We saw it happen with Discovery Channel. I think they were doing some mining up in Alaska and they weren't being safe, and OSHA ended up showing up because of the TV show. Wow. So they found some unsafe stuff.
How reasonable do you find OSHA as organization, OSHA agents? Like, are they reasonable, unreasonable? Are they anal, easy to work, hard to work?
As long as you're compliant, right? Like if you're doing the best that you can as an employer, I feel like OSHA's job is to help keep you safe and help work with you. But if you're out there trying to put people at risk, like just not caring about the safety of workers, they're going to stick it to you, and they have the right to, and I think they should. I mean, personally.
You mentioned that you help. Give me an example how you help to reduce the fine, or what a contractor can do to reduce the fines. I've seen a lot of news clips recently where companies being charged ungodly amount. I mean, a couple hundred thousands, per jobs. What's the protocol?
So the best thing that you can do for yourself as a company, like if you're in management of a company, is always, I would say without a doubt, set up what's called an informal conference. And if you're not aware, get with somebody that knows about the informal conference process. It's kind of like where you get a speeding ticket and you get to negotiate maybe a reduced penalty. You can do the same thing with an OSHA fine.
If you don't, it'll be a regional.
Well, it's going to stay whatever it is no matter what. So at least going in.
So how does it work? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so
What happens is typically if you're violating a rule or regulation, OSHA has 6 months to come out to give you a ticket or to send out a ticket in the mail, right? A violation or a fine. And it's going to come certified mail. So you have to sign for it. And then you have 2 weeks, 15 days to set up that informal conference. And that's where you go in and you kind of plead your case. Maybe tell them things that you've done to try to correct the situation. If it was a lack of equipment or a lack of training and you've done these things since then, when you go in and you show them those records, it helps possibly reduce.
So it's not that original OSHA fine. It's not guaranteed.
It's not concrete.
It's not concrete. Many people
In
think
that
it is.
15 days, get your stuff together and say, hey, these are the changes that I have made. We're taking this serious.
Well, and so even in the informal conference, right? Maybe you receive a citation from OSHA and it's a $10,000 ticket and it's failure to provide training. Well, in reality, you had the training, right? But your guy said, oh, I didn't know. I was never trained. Well, that's because they're trying to protect themselves, right? Because they were busted doing something wrong. So they were like, oh, I didn't know any better. But in reality, they were trained, right? And so you can bring in that proof of training and you say, hey, look, 4 months before then, we trained these guys how to wear that equipment the right way to do it. And in fact, your ticket for failing to provide the training can go away. So it's super helpful. But if you just pay that ticket, if you just wait past that 2 weeks, you're going to end up paying 100%. And there's no reason to do that.
Most common fines OSHA gives in residential roofing.
Residential roofing, failure to provide fall protection. It is
Provide or wear?
it's
Because if I provided it and it's on the grass and the roofers without, I provided it.
well, OSHA looks at it being on the roof as you're not providing fall protection. Just because you have the equipment doesn't mean that it's being provided. Like you have the equipment, but it's not necessarily in use. It's like, say, a guardrail being installed, but you've taken it down. It doesn't mean that it's going to keep you safe, right? So OSHA, just having the equipment on the job is one thing, but not using it. Yeah, not using it, making sure that they're using it properly.
What about commercial roofing? Most common fines in commercial?
As far as commercial roofing, again, it's kind of the same thing. I think if you went to the top 10 roofing violations, first one's probably going to be like failure to use fall protection or provide fall protection, or it's not adequately provided or used, right? And then ladders are going to be up there. Failure to provide training is going to be up there. These are probably in the top 5.
Who is responsible for accidents when safety protocols are in place but not followed? So for example, you come to Tectum, you train all their employees, and then employee goes in and just ignore everything he learned yesterday.
So that's kind of a cool thing about OSHA, right? And I think a lot of employees don't know, is that if let's say you're not doing something correct, the employee themselves will never ever receive a citation from OSHA, right? It's not the employee's responsibility to make sure they're safe, it's their employer. And so it falls back on whoever they work for, right? And so it depends if you sub-work out, like if you're subcontracting work to a smaller company, inevitably that smaller boss of that company
He has to do the same.
that he keeps his workers
So
safe.
you're losing your liability completely, or you're
Not
still
completely,
liable?
because with
I'm still going to
OSHA,
get a fine.
Yeah, with OSHA, because say, for instance, Tectum brought on that subcontractor. Well, if that sub is being unsafe, it's his responsibility to make sure that he enforces the safety on his subcontractor. And so if he's not doing that, then they both can get a ticket for that subcontractor.
I'm required to have a project manager, a superintendent. If I'm using subcontractors, residential and commercial, that superintendent has to show up at least once a day, and they have to log everything. And that's where we get into safety violations. Everything has to be logged.
That's part of the multi-employer workplace, and that's really how OSHA cites somebody for even not working for a company. But the fact that he was exposed to this danger was because Sean hired potentially a subcontractor to do that roof. So it keeps going uphill until you have documentation and training to support that you don't allow unsafe stuff. Like accidents are going to happen, guys are going to forget, it happens. But I mean, the good part is that that worker is never going to see that ticket, but the employer needs to do something with that, some kind of reprimand or discipline. And I think that that's where a lot of companies, could do a better job, is making sure that they at least hold somebody accountable.
Best and worst ladders on the market that you see from OSHA standpoint.
Best and worst ladders.
You like telescopic ladders?
So definitely any kind of fiberglass ladder, non-conductive side rails are going to be the best type of ladders,
Anything
right?
heavy, right?
Yeah, it's a heavier rating, type 1, type 2 ladders, right? The bad ladders that you're going to see are going to be those lightweight aluminum red plastic tip ladders. They're rated for 200 pounds, and in fact the stickers tell you that it's for a household use only. But be careful, right? Because it's rated at 200 pounds. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of close to that 200 pound mark myself without any tools or material. So keeping that in mind is the material that you're trying to take up the ladder is important in selecting the right ladder. Job built ladders would be another bad ladder. I think a lot of people think that they can make a ladder safe, but it's very hard to comply with that rule.
Will OSHA bust you for the telescopic ladders? Like the ones you carry on the plane?
As long as it's rated.
It's rated. Those rated 250, 300 even. Okay. How do you react to videos when you see guys wearing 4 or 5 bundles of shingles, being the matches and going on the ladder? Is it a fine immediately if OSHA sees it? I mean, it's got to be, because the ladder is 300 pounds. It's a quick
standard says don't carry any object or load that could cause you to lose your balance. That's the exact words.
But it's overweight essentially. So is it
without a doubt?
Fine.
But you're not allowed to have anything in your hand, so that's why every single one of my guys is provided with a backpack, and they have to have both hands on the ladder. It's even in our safety program.
Yeah, you can't carry anything up the ladder. It's written.
Not even a tape measure.
Policy that they can't carry any object up the ladder. They use ropes and pulleys a lot of the time to bring their stuff. Roof, they have roof loaded, preloaded roofs sometimes. If they have that ability to preload a roof, they'll do that.
What about inspections? Am I allowed to inspect a roof without top gear?
It's a very, very gray, sticky question. And I'm going to answer the best of my ability. Note that I've got 20 years experience and I've asked that question to many different OSHA inspectors and gotten various answers. And I guess the best interpretation that I've kind of put together is that if there's an anchor point provided and you're up there inspecting, you should be using that anchor point. However, if they're actively working, right, and they're tied off, you should be tied off. There's no ability for you to inspect when they're actively working, because they could be a distraction, right? And so they could take away from your inspecting ability and cause the distraction. It could cause you to get hurt. So be very, very careful with this. If they're actively working, because there is that exception for the inspection process, right? There's the exception for the inspection process. But if they're working, I wouldn't do it.
I've never
right?
seen it.
And so that's really where they wrote that rule, right? Was for
adjusters are above the law.
Adjusters are always above the law.
No, so they can get up there and look.
Right? So if you're a homeowner, you're not going to let that guy come out and take an inspection of your roof and tie off, because in order for them to do that, they've got to penetrate your roof. And then what? They're going to come down and say, hey, you have at least 32 holes in your roof from my anchor. right?
All right.
So they don't make that the requirement. And that's really who they wrote it for, was the guy initially going up there to do the inspection to find out if it needed a re-roof.
Can you give advice to a brand new contractor who just started yesterday, filed his paperwork, and decided to be a roofing contractor?
Oh, wow. Brand new advice to a brand new company would be, first off, check with your local, state, or national office. Obviously, figure out, depending on where you're at in the country, whether it's a state-run program or a federally run program as far as the OSHA is concerned. And then trying to find applicable rules for what you do. OSHA does not tell you what rules you need to follow. It's up to you guys to make sure that you get the best rules. And if you don't know, obviously the internet's a good place to look, but it could be a scary resource as well. Note that you don't know where that information is coming from or how compiled it is. So reaching out to professionals in the field, like third-party safety consultants, even OSHA themselves, if you reach out to your local OSHA office, they can help you with resources on certain safety programs, definitely point you in the right place. But as far as a new contractor, that's a good place to start.
Most underestimated safety item that's so easy to follow and no one's using it. What is it?
As far as like roofing or just construction in general?
Roofing,
So,
construction.
the number one OSHA cited offense would be scaffolds, right? It receives more violations than any other.
OSHA rule and regulations, and it could be for not being set up properly or inspected. So one thing I can tell everybody without a doubt is if you're trying to protect yourself, train your people, because if you go to the top 10 OSHA citations, in the top 10 of each one of those categories, whether it's scaffolds or fall protection, it's failure to provide training. And so if
Having training manuals.
training manuals, documentation of the training, right? Proof that you're doing what you're supposed to do. That's essential.
First thing I teach my guys, do not have anything in your hands when you go up the ladder.
Really quick, let's talk about delivery safety. Like the boom trucks, we see it all the time. We see it here in Colorado Springs. I've seen the news where a pallet goes through the roof, or the delivery guy comes in and starts swinging pallets in the air.
Supplier felt that all the shingles should go on one ridge.
So who's responsible for that destruction and their safety protocols and
It's
stuff?
definitely on the supplier. That is definitely a supplier's responsibility. We've had several situations, all the way from overloading roofs. We've seen them collapse on the news. The most unseen condition is when your supplier gets lazy and they throw their bundle on the roof, and then next thing you're getting a call that your trusses are cracked. And now you're getting a structural engineer out there to fix everything. That is the responsibility of your roofing supplier. We make sure that we do a pre-start checklist with our customers, and we go through, we actually get in their attic and we take a picture of those trusses, because guess what? Once you repair one, you don't want to do it again. I can promise that. Okay. And if you do, you definitely don't want to pay for it. I want my supplier to pay for it.
My last question is, give maybe advice how to act or behave or talk to OSHA inspector when he arrives and you know you're in trouble. What to say, what not to say. You're my OSHA lawyer. Give me the spiel.
Okay.
Start talking Russian.
The first thing that you want to do is you want to find out the nature of the visit, right? Again, there's different reasons why they're there. Find out why you're seeing OSHA on your job site, right? Once you get OSHA there,
Don't they have authority just to show up?
they can show up whenever they want, right?
But they still, do they have to give you the reason?
They do. They must tell you the nature of the reason as to why they're there, right? And that kind of helps you, because if they were driving down the street and they saw somebody, maybe you can minimize your exposure to just what they saw.
Right.
Okay.
So you're saying if they're driving down the street and they see a guy not tied off, they can come there for a focused inspection on that tie off. If my cords are cut or something along those lines or stripped, they can't find me for that.
Potentially. I mean, they're not going to necessarily look like, where if it's a programmed inspection, today's your day, right? They're going to look at everything. But if they're there because they were driving down the street and they saw something, well, maybe you just focus on what they were seeing versus walking the entire project or job site to look for electrical cords and other issues like he was talking about. So understanding the nature. And then what I would say is less is more. Very similar to the police, right? When you speak to the police, if you were to be arrested, right, they read you your rights, and they say that you have the right to remain silent, and anything you say can and will be used against you. And I think I like to point out that they say will be used against you, because I'm going to tell you that OSHA is no different, right? When they show up and you begin to speak to them, you have the right to not say anything. But when you start to
The first thing I tell my guys.
when you start to speak to them,
Shut up.
they have
the ability to use what you're saying against you. And I remind people that when you're saying something to OSHA, they don't say that it's going to help you out. They don't reiterate that it's going to help you out of this situation. Yeah, but I didn't know. Well, listen, ignorance doesn't mean that you're not going to get a ticket. Well, we only did it for this long. Well, admitting that you're breaking the law is not going to help you out, right? So all of these things, less is more is a very safe statement, right? Knowing what you're saying, having somebody who's, quote, competent, right? OSHA asks for competent people. And so,
Is there OSHA regulations for like drinking on the job?
yeah, you can't do it. There's
Lots
zero
of water.
Yeah,
Lots of water.
water on a regular basis on a hot day.
But
right?
can they fine you? Like if OSHA comes in and they see roofers drinking beer, smoking pot, what can they do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Unsafe job conditions.
Really?
They're not the ones that would give you like a police ticket per se, right? So it's not against the law in that sense, but it is a violation of safety and health to be under the influence of drugs and alcohol on the job site.
Is there a roof temperature that we're not allowed to be on the roof that OSHA considers an unsafe temperature?
That's a very great question. I mean, as long as it's being monitored, right? The conditions of the day, I think when you start to get into the heat indexes, I think the states that have those concerns like Florida, Texas, California, those kind of areas, they kind of put things into place already. Nevada's got a requirement to supply water to people because of their temperatures. So I feel like most of the states that have those requirements kind of help adapt. I don't know that there's such thing as too hot and or too cold to work, right? If it's uncomfortable, don't do it.
Love it. I'll just, we're done. Guys, comment below what you think.